You've probably seen that famous image, the one showing the evolution of humans. It starts with a knuckle-walking ape, which gradually stands up straighter and straighter until it becomes a modern human. For a long time we thought our story was that simple. We were apes who learned to walk on two legs and lost our fur. But what if I told you that one of our oldest known relatives looked nothing like that stereotype? What if the key to our past wasn't a chimp-like creature, but something entirely different? Today, we're traveling back 4.4 million years to meet a game-changing ancestor, Ardipithecus ramidus, or Ardi for short. The discovery of Ardi didn't just add another branch to our family tree. It completely redrew it. It challenged everything we thought we knew about where we came from. The story begins in the Afar Depression of Ethiopia, a place often called the cradle of humanity. In 1994, a team led by paleoanthropologist Tim White unearthed something extraordinary. They found not just a few scattered bones, but a partial skeleton of a hominin female. Over the next decade, they painstakingly pieced together 125 fossil fragments. The result was a creature that was neither human nor chimpanzee. It was something new, something that forced a major scientific rethink. So, what was so shocking about Ardi? First, let's talk about how she moved. For decades, scientists believed that the first hominins to come down from the trees would have been a lot like modern chimpanzees. They'd have walked on their knuckles. But Ardi's anatomy told a different story. Her wrist and finger bones weren't built for knuckle walking. Instead, she likely moved through the trees on all fours, carefully walking along the tops of branches, more like an ancient monkey than an ape. But here's the twist. While her feet still had a grasping big toe, perfect for climbing, her pelvis was a total surprise. It showed clear adaptations for walking upright on two legs. The upper part of her pelvis was short and broad, similar to ours, providing stability when standing. The lower part, however, was more ape-like, providing attachment points for powerful leg muscles used in climbing. This combination was revolutionary. Ardi wasn't a full-time biped like us, nor was she a full-time tree dweller. She was a facultative biped, meaning she could walk upright on the ground when she needed to, but was still very much at home in the trees. This tells us that the transition to walking on two legs wasn't an all-or-nothing event. It was a gradual process, with our ancestors maintaining their climbing abilities for a very long time. They were navigating two worlds at once, the forest canopy and the open ground. Now, let's bust that ape-to-human stereotype. We often think of our last common ancestor with chimpanzees as being very chimp-like. But Ardi suggests that's wrong. She lived long after our lineage split from the one leading to chimps. Yet she doesn't have the specialized traits we see in modern African apes, like those for knuckle walking or swinging below branches. This implies that chimpanzees and gorillas have been evolving and specializing just as much as we have. They aren't static living fossils representing our starting point. Instead, Ardi suggests our common ancestor was likely a creature that was even more generalized, not specialized for any single form of movement. Both the human and chimpanzee lines went in dramatically different directions from that starting point. We specialized in upright walking, while chimps specialized in their own unique way of life in the forest. What about Ardi's world? Based on the plant and animal fossils found alongside her, we know she didn't live on an open savanna, which was the long-held theory for why we started walking upright. Instead, she lived in a woodland environment. This means the classic savanna hypothesis, that we stood up to see over tall grass or free our hands in a treeless landscape, might be wrong, or at least incomplete. Perhaps bipedalism first evolved to help carry food back to a mate or offspring in a woodland setting, a behavior that would strengthen social bonds. And speaking of social bonds, Ardi's teeth give us another fascinating clue. Unlike male apes like gorillas or chimps, who have large, sharp, tusk-like canines for fighting and intimidation, Ardi's male counterparts had relatively small canines, very similar to the females. This reduction in fighting teeth is a hallmark of the human line. It suggests that Ardipithecus society may have had less male-on-male aggression than what we see in many modern apes. This could point to a shift in social structure, perhaps towards more cooperation and pair bonding, long before our brains got big or we started making stone tools. Think about what this means. 4.4 million years ago, a creature was living a life we could barely imagine. Waking up in the trees, climbing for fruit, but then coming down to the ground and walking on two legs to cross a clearing. The males of her species weren't heavily armed for combat. suggesting a different kind of social dynamic was already taking root. Ardi is not our direct, great-grandmother in a linear sense. She belongs to a side branch of our family tree, a cousin if you will. But she gives us the best glimpse we have of what our ancestors were like shortly after we parted ways with the ancestors of chimpanzees. She proves that our evolutionary journey wasn't a straight line from ape to human. It was a winding path, filled with fascinating experiments in how to be a hominin. Ardipithecus forces us to appreciate the complexity of our past. She shows us that the story of human evolution isn't about leaving an apey life behind, but about both humans and apes evolving in their own unique ways from a common, and perhaps surprising, ancestor. Ardi stood at a crossroads, with one foot in the trees and one on the ground, paving the way for the millions of years of evolution that would eventually lead to us. She wasn't an ape on its way to becoming human. She was Ardipithecus, a unique and successful creature in her own right, and a crucial character in the story of where we all came from. Picture this, a dense ancient forest in Africa, 4.4 million years ago. A small, ape-like creature forages on the ground, alert to every sound. This is Ardipithecus ramidus, or Ardi for short. Looking at her, you wouldn't bet on her descendants inheriting the earth. She's not particularly big, strong, or fast. She has no sharp claws, no menacing fangs. Compared to the saber-toothed cats and giant hyenas that roam her world, she seems utterly defenseless. So, how did this seemingly fragile creature not only survive but also pave the way for us Homo sapiens? The answer is a revolution, not of brawn, but of behavior. When we think of survival in the wild, we usually picture raw power. The fastest cheetah, the strongest bear, the deadliest viper. Our early ancestors, however, didn't have any of these advantages. Ardi was a creature of compromise. Her feet, for example, had a grasping big toe, great for climbing trees to escape predators or find food. But they were also flatter and more rigid than a chimpanzee's, hinting at the beginnings of upright walking on the ground. This dual-purpose anatomy meant she wasn't the best climber, nor the best walker. She was a master of none, physically speaking. Her teeth tell a similar story. Unlike the large, sharp canines we see in male chimpanzees and gorillas, which are used for fighting and intimidation, Ardi's canines, both male and female, were small and blunt. This is a huge clue. It suggests that the intense, often violent competition among males for mates, so common in other primates, was starting to fade. Instead of fighting each other, Ardipithecus males were likely beginning to cooperate. But why? Why give up the alpha male strategy that had been successful for millions of years? The reason might lie in a new way of life. As the forests of Africa began to thin, resources like food became more spread out. A lone individual would struggle to find enough to eat while also watching out for predators. But a group? A group could work together. Some could forage while others kept watch. This is where the story gets really interesting. For a group to function, its members need to tolerate each other. The old-school aggression and rivalry just wouldn't work. Imagine trying to gather berries with someone who might attack you at any moment. It's inefficient and stressful. So Ardipithecus embarked on a new evolutionary path, one that prioritized social harmony over individual dominance. The males with smaller canines, who were perhaps less aggressive and more cooperative, were more successful. Not because they could win fights, but because they were better at building alliances and securing a mate through a different strategy, provisioning. This is the idea that males would gather food and bring it back to a specific female, investing in her and her offspring. This is a game changer. It builds a bond, a partnership. It ensures the female has enough energy to raise young, and it gives the male more certainty that he's providing for his own kids. This shift required a massive cognitive leap. It meant planning, trust, and communication. It meant remembering who your partner was, where to find the best food, and how to get it back safely. This is the dawn of the family, the foundation of our entire social structure. It wasn't about being the toughest ape in the forest. It was about being the most reliable partner. This new social dynamic favored brains over brawn. A clever, resourceful mate was now more valuable than a big, aggressive one. This new cooperative lifestyle also had a profound effect on their minds. Living in a complex social group requires a lot of mental horsepower. You need to keep track of relationships, understand others' intentions, and navigate social rules. It's like a constant mental workout. This social pressure was likely a key driver in the expansion of the hominin brain. Our intelligence didn't evolve so we could invent tools or make fire, not at first. It evolved so we could get along with each other. Think about it. The most critical resource for early hominins wasn't a tool or a weapon, it was each other. Your survival depended on your ability to cooperate, to trust, and to build relationships. An individual who was too aggressive, too selfish, or too untrustworthy would be ostracized from the group. And in the prehistoric world, being alone was a death sentence. So, natural selection began to favor a different set of traits: empathy, tolerance, and the ability to work together. We were becoming the friendly ape. This laid the groundwork for everything that came after. The ability to share food and care for each other allowed our ancestors to raise more children successfully. The need for better communication to coordinate group activities may have spurred the evolution of language. The trust and cooperation learned within the family group could be scaled up, allowing for the formation of larger tribes and eventually complex societies. All of these incredible human achievements have their roots in a simple choice made millions of years ago: to cooperate rather than compete. Ardipithecus shows us that there's more than one way to win the game of evolution. You don't have to be the strongest or the fastest. You can win by being the smartest, the most social, and the most cooperative. Our ancestors swapped claws for kindness, fangs for family. They built a world based on mutual support, not mutual destruction. They survived not by overpowering their enemies, but by befriending their allies. This is a powerful lesson. It tells us that our deepest, most fundamental instinct isn't aggression or dominance, but cooperation. It's written into our very DNA, a legacy of our fragile, clever ancestors who learned to survive in a dangerous world by relying on each other. When Ardi walked to the earth, she was physically weak, vulnerable, and surrounded by creatures far more powerful than herself. But she possessed a secret weapon, something no claw or fang could ever match. A mind that was beginning to understand the power of us. This revolutionary shift from individual strength to collective cooperation is what set our lineage on the path to becoming human. It's the story of how a mind without claws came to inherit the planet. It's a reminder that our greatest strength has never been our ability to fight, but our ability to come together. Ever felt like you don't quite fit in? Like you're caught between two different worlds? Well, you've got something in common with one of our most fascinating ancestors, Ardipithecus. This ancient hominin who lived over 4 million years ago was a true trailblazer, not quite an ape, not quite human, but something entirely new. Today, we're diving deep into the story of Ardipithecus, the creature that literally walked between worlds and rewrote the book on human evolution. So grab your explorer's hat and let's journey back in time. The story begins in the Afar region of Ethiopia, a place famous for paleontological treasures. In the 1990s, a team of scientists unearthed something extraordinary: the partial skeleton of a female Ardipithecus ramidus, nicknamed Ardi. This wasn't just a few scattered bones. It was one of the most complete early hominin skeletons ever found. Ardi lived 4.4 million years ago, a million years before the famous Lucy, and her discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Why? Because she challenged everything we thought we knew about how our earliest ancestors moved and lived. Before Ardi, the popular theory was that our ancestors descended from the trees, developed knuckle-walking like modern chimps and gorillas, and only then started walking upright. It seemed like a logical progression. But Ardi's skeleton told a completely different story. She was a master of mixed locomotion, a true hybrid of the ancient and the new. Let's start with her feet. Unlike modern humans with our arched, rigid feet designed for efficient running, Ardi had a grasping big toe, much like an ape's. This was a clear sign that she was still very much at home in the trees. She could have easily gripped branches, climbing to find food or escape from predators. Imagine her, moving through the forest canopy with an agility we can only dream of. But here's the twist. The rest of her foot bones showed adaptations for pushing off the ground, a key feature of bipedal walking. So, while her big toe said, climber, the rest of her foot was saying, walk. It was a foot built for two different worlds. And it wasn't just her feet. Her pelvis was a beautiful mosaic of traits. The upper part was short and broad, similar to a human pelvis, which is crucial for supporting the body's weight during upright walking. It allowed her to balance on two legs without toppling over. But the lower part of her pelvis was more ape-like, providing attachment points for powerful leg muscles used in climbing. This combination is incredible. It means Ardi could walk upright on the ground, but when she needed to, she could switch gears and become an adept climber. She wasn't clumsy on the ground or in the trees. She was competent in both. This dual capability is what makes Ardipithecus so revolutionary. It suggests that upright walking didn't evolve after we abandoned the trees. Instead, it seems our ancestors began walking on two legs while they were still spending a significant amount of time in the arboreal world. There was no single moment where we stood up and never looked back. It was a gradual, messy, and fascinating transition, and Ardi gives us a perfect snapshot of that process in action. She wasn't a knuckle walker like a chimp. Her wrists were flexible, not stiff and reinforced for bearing weight on her knuckles. This discovery dismantled the long-held idea that knuckle walking was a necessary phase in our evolution. Instead, it looks like our lineage and the chimp lineage went their separate ways, and each developed their own unique way of getting around. So if Ardi was walking upright, what kind of world was she walking in? The environment she inhabited is just as surprising as her anatomy. For a long time, we pictured early hominins striding out of the forest and onto the vast open savanna. This savanna hypothesis suggested that the spread of grasslands forced our ancestors to adapt to life on the ground. But the fossils of plants and animals found alongside Ardi paint a very different picture. She lived in a woodland environment. Not a dense, closed canopy rainforest, but a mosaic of trees, shrubs, and grassy patches. There were ancient fig trees, palms, and hackberry trees. This environment provided both opportunities and challenges. The trees offered food and safety, while the ground offered new resources to exploit. Ardipithecus was perfectly suited to this mixed habitat. Her ability to walk on two legs would have been a huge advantage for moving between patches of trees, perhaps carrying food or tools while keeping her hands free. And when danger approached, like an ancient bear or a big cat, the trees were her go-to escape route. This tells us something profound about early human evolution. It wasn't about being the best at one thing. It wasn't about being the fastest runner or the most efficient climber. It was about being flexible. Ardipithecus wasn't a specialist. She was a generalist. She had a toolkit of behaviors that allowed her to thrive in a changing world. This environmental flexibility was likely a key ingredient in our lineage's long-term success. While other species might have been perfectly adapted to one specific niche, our ancestors had the ability to adapt and survive as climates shifted and landscapes transformed over millions of years. Think about it, adaptation over specialization. This is a powerful theme in our evolutionary story. Ardipithecus wasn't trying to become human. She was just trying to survive. Her unique mix of traits was the best solution for the world she lived in. Her body was a compromise, a perfect balance for a creature living on the edge of two ecosystems. This strategy of being a jack-of-all-trades paid off. It allowed her lineage to persist, to experiment, and to eventually give rise to later hominins like Australopithecus and ultimately, us. So what can we take away from the story of Ardipithecus? First, evolution isn't a neat straight line. It's a complex, branching tree full of dead ends, surprising twists, and remarkable creatures like Ardi, who defy easy categorization. She reminds us that the path to humanity was not preordained. It was a journey of adaptation, compromise, and incredible resilience. Second, the idea of being caught between two worlds isn't a weakness, it's a strength. Ardi's ability to navigate both the trees and the ground gave her an evolutionary edge. Her flexibility allowed her to thrive where specialists might have failed. It's a powerful lesson that adaptability is often more valuable than perfection in a single area. Ardipithecus truly walked between worlds, a testament to the innovative power of evolution. She was neither ape nor human, but a unique being that paved the way for everything that came after. Her discovery opened a new chapter in the story of our origins, showing us a time when our ancestors were just beginning to explore the possibilities of life on 2 feet with 1 foot still firmly planted in the world of our arboreal past. It's a humble and awe-inspiring reminder of where we come from and the incredible journey it took to get here. Have you ever wondered when love stories began? I'm not talking about Romeo and Juliet, but a love story millions of years in the making. Our journey today takes us back 4.4 million years to meet a creature that might have sparked one of the most significant revolutions in human history. A social one. Meet Ardipithecus ramidus, or Ardi for short. This ancient hominin didn't wield fire or craft complex tools, but it may have pioneered something even more fundamental. the beginnings of the human family. Let's set the scene. Imagine the woodlands of what is now Ethiopia. It's a world very different from our own, filled with ancient predators and lush greenery. This was Ardi's home. For a long time, scientists believed our earliest ancestors were chimp-like, with males constantly fighting each other for dominance and mating rights. Think of a society built on brute force, where the biggest and strongest male gets everything. This aggressive competition is reflected in their anatomy: large, sharp canine teeth, almost like daggers, used for intimidation and combat. But when we look at Ardi, we see a completely different picture. The fossil evidence, particularly from a remarkably complete skeleton nicknamed Ardi, tells a surprising story. Male Ardipithecus had significantly smaller, blunter canine teeth compared to their ape relatives and even other early hominins. This might sound like a small detail, but it's a massive clue. Those large, dagger-like canines in many primates aren't just for show. They're weapons in a constant battle for supremacy. Smaller canines suggest that these intense, violent rivalries between males were starting to fade away. So, what replaced all that fighting? The leading theory is a fascinating one: the dawn of pair bonding. Instead of males fighting each other for access to females, they may have started forming stable, long-term relationships. This is a huge shift in social dynamics. But why would this happen? The answer might lie in a clever evolutionary trade-off. Picture an early Ardipithecus male. Instead of spending all his energy fighting other males, what if he focused on providing for a specific female? He could bring her food, protect her, and help care for their young. This strategy, known as the provisioning hypothesis, offers some major advantages. For the female, having a dedicated partner means more consistent access to food and better protection, which increases the chances of her and her offspring surviving. For the male, it's a different kind of win. Instead of gambling on winning a violent fight, he secures a mate and can be more certain that the offspring he's helping to raise are actually his. This is a more reliable way to pass on his genes. Females, in turn, might have started to prefer these helpful, less aggressive males over the traditional bullies. Over generations, this preference would favor males with smaller canines and a more cooperative nature. It's a feedback loop where cooperation and partnership become the winning strategy. This change had a profound ripple effect on their entire society. With less male-on-male conflict, the whole group becomes more stable and peaceful. Energy that was once wasted on fighting could now be channeled into more productive activities, like finding food and raising the next generation. This growing stability laid the groundwork for something we often take for granted: the family. The concept of a nuclear family, a mother, a father, and their children, has its deepest roots right here. Ardi's world wasn't about grand romantic gestures, but about practical partnerships that ensured survival. This new social structure, built on cooperation instead of competition, was a game-changer. It allowed for a longer childhood, a crucial period for learning and brain development. Young hominins could now rely on the care and protection of two parents, not just one. This extended period of dependency is a hallmark of the human lineage, and it's what allows us to develop our large, complex brains. Think about it: the very foundation of human society: cooperation, family bonds, and caring for our young might have started with a simple change in tooth size. It was a silent revolution, not one of clashing stones but of changing hearts and minds. Ardi shows us that our journey to becoming human wasn't just about walking upright or using tools. It was also about learning to live together, to cooperate, and perhaps to love. This shift towards reduced aggression and increased social bonding wasn't just a fluke. It was a critical stepping stone for everything that followed. It created a social environment where more complex behaviors could evolve. When you don't have to constantly look over your shoulder for a rival, you have the mental space to innovate, to communicate, and to build stronger community ties. This cooperative framework would become essential for later hominins who would go on to hunt large game, share food, and develop culture. The story of Ardipithecus is a powerful reminder that our evolutionary success isn't just about being the strongest or the most aggressive. It's about our unique ability to form bonds, to care for one another, and to work together. Ardi wasn't the end of the story, of course. The path to modern humans was long and winding, with many other ancestors like the Australopithecines and the genus Homo adding their own chapters. But Ardi may have written the crucial first page of our social story. By trading daggers for diplomacy, fangs for family, Ardipithecus set our lineage on a new and extraordinary path. It was a path that would ultimately lead to us, a species defined by our intricate social lives, our capacity for empathy, and our deep-seated need for connection. So the next time you think about the origins of humanity, don't just picture a caveman with a club. Picture Ardi, the peaceful pioneer who showed us that cooperation, not conflict, was the key to our future. The greatest revolution in our history might not have been fought with weapons, but with the quiet emergence of care and partnership in the ancient forests of Africa. Today, we're diving deep into our family tree way back to meet a relative you've probably never heard of, Ardipithecus ramidus, or Ardi for short. Ever wondered why some of our ancestors, like the famous Lucy, get all the attention while others fade into obscurity? Well, Ardi's story isn't just a forgotten chapter in human evolution. It's a powerful lesson that might just change how you see everything. Let's set the scene. For decades, the story of human evolution seemed pretty straightforward. Our ancestors came down from the trees, stood up straight, and started walking on two legs across the African savanna. This transition was supposedly driven by a changing climate that replaced forests with grasslands. We imagined a chimp-like creature taking its first upright steps, a missing link between apes and us. This simple, linear story was easy to tell and even easier to believe. It's the one you see in all the classic evolution diagrams, that iconic march of progress from a crouching ape to an upright human. Then, in 1994, a team of scientists in Ethiopia discovered something that threw a huge wrench in that neat little story. They found the fossilized remains of a hominin that lived 4.4 million years ago. This was Ardi. The discovery was monumental, but it took an international team of experts 15 years to painstakingly piece together and analyze the crushed and scattered bones. When they finally published their findings in 2009, the world of paleoanthropology was shaken. So, why was Ardi such a game-changer? Because she didn't fit the narrative at all. First off, Ardi was a biped. She walked on two legs. But her feet were bizarre. She had a grasping big toe, kind of like an ape's, perfect for climbing trees. Yet, the rest of her foot was rigid, built for pushing off the ground while walking upright. She was a climber and a walker. This combination was completely unexpected. She wasn't just a chimp that decided to stand up. She was something entirely different, a mosaic of features we'd never seen before. And where did she live? Not on the open savanna, as the old theory predicted. The fossil evidence from her discovery cite fossilized plants, seeds, and animals showed that Ardi lived in a woodland environment. She was walking on two legs in the forest among the trees. This discovery completely debunked the idea that bipedalism evolved as a direct response to grasslands. Our ancestors didn't stand up because the trees disappeared. They stood up while still living in them. This brings us to why Ardi was, in a way, forgotten by the public. She's complicated. She messes up the clean, simple story we were so comfortable with. The March of Progress poster is a powerful, appealing image, but it's wrong. Evolution isn't a straight line. It's a messy, branching bush, with countless experiments and dead ends. Ardi represents this complexity. She shows us that nature doesn't follow a script. Our ancestors weren't striving to become us. They were just adapting to their own world, in their own time. Popular science often favors simplicity. Lucy, the Australopithecus afarensis, was easier to understand. She was found earlier, and she fit more neatly into the existing story as a more advanced biped, a clear step along the path to humanity. Ardi, on the other hand, forces us to rethink the entire foundation of that path. She challenges our assumptions, and challenging long-held beliefs is always uncomfortable. It's easier to stick with the familiar story than to embrace a more complex, and frankly more interesting reality. But this is exactly why Ardi matters so much right now. Her story is a profound lesson in humility. It reminds us that we don't have all the answers and that our most cherished theories can be overturned by a single inconvenient fossil. It teaches us that the natural world is far more creative and unpredictable than we often give it credit for. Ardi wasn't a missing link on a predestined path to Homo sapiens. She was a successful creature in her own right, perfectly adapted to her unique woodland world. Think about her for a moment, a creature that could move gracefully through the trees and also walk upright on the ground. She was a master of two worlds. This wasn't a clumsy transition. It was a highly effective survival strategy. It was a demonstration of incredible adaptability, and isn't that the real story of humanity? Not a march towards perfection, but a story of constant adaptation in the face of change. This brings us to the mirror Ardi holds up to modern humanity. We often see ourselves as the pinnacle of evolution, the end goal. We've mastered the planet, built incredible technologies, and created complex societies. But Ardi reminds us that we are just one branch on a vast, sprawling tree of life. Our success, like hers, is a product of our ability to adapt. But are we still as adaptable as our ancient relative? Ardi thrived by being versatile, by not putting all her eggs in one basket. She could climb and she could walk. She had options. Today, in our highly specialized world, have we lost some of that flexibility? We face unprecedented challenges: climate change, resource depletion, social division. These challenges demand the same kind of adaptability that allowed our ancestors to navigate their changing world millions of years ago. The arrogance of thinking we know the whole story, the same arrogance that made it easy to sideline Ardi, is a dangerous trait. Ardi's existence is a powerful counter-narrative to human exceptionalism. We're not separate from nature. We are a product of it, shaped by the same messy, unpredictable forces. Furthermore, Ardi's anatomy offers another fascinating clue. The male and female Ardipithecus skeletons show very little difference in the size of their canine teeth. In many primate species, large male canines are a sign of intense competition for mates. The smaller, more uniform canines in Ardi suggest a different social structure, one with less male-on-male aggression, and perhaps more cooperation and pair bonding. This hints that the foundations of our cooperative social nature might extend much further back in time than we ever thought. The move away from brute force competition and towards social cooperation could have been one of the very first steps on our unique evolutionary journey. So the next time you see that classic March of Progress image, remember Ardi, remember the forgotten ancestor who walked in the woods, who climbed in the trees, and who completely rewrote the first chapter of our story. She reminds us that the truth is often messier, more complex, and infinitely more fascinating than the simple stories we tell ourselves. She teaches us humility in the face of the vastness of time and the beautiful chaos of evolution. Ardi's story is not just about the past. It's a vital lesson for our future. It's a call to be humble, to be adaptable, and to recognize that our survival depends not on our sense of mastery, but on our ability to live as part of the complex, interconnected web of life. We are all, in a way, still navigating a woodland of our own making, and we need all the flexibility and ingenuity we can muster. Thanks for joining me on this journey back in time. It's incredible what these ancient bones can teach us, isn't it? If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shape us. Let me know in the comments what you think about Ardi and her place in our family tree. See you in the next video.